The Three Lessons of Statesmanship, Part 3. This is Ron. Welcome to Story Time. If we compare the three cases of Britain, Poland, and Greece, we can draw the third lesson. It concerns strategy. Strategy must be rooted in the purposes of the nation. It aims to preserve the nation in pursuit of those purposes. This means that strategy is not confined, when it is pursued by the statesman, to war alone. Churchill wrote, "The distinction between politics and strategy diminishes as the point of view is raised. At the summit, true politics and strategy are one." Churchill lived, loved, and fought for the liberal society. Liberal societies protect the rights of their peoples, their right to make their livings, to raise their children, to speak their minds. These are the elements of a fully human life. Under a free and limited government, the right of all to pursue this life is recognized and defended. The justice of this kind of government is the reason that Churchill, the grandson of a duke, was not an aristocrat, but a defender of democracy. War, Churchill explained, has a serious or a curious relationship to democracy and limited government. Free nations are innovative. They produce new and more powerful tools, including weapons of war. They are productive. Wealth is generated when free people work, save, invest, and trade. These new tools or technology and this new wealth have transformed the world. This trend is led by nations who leave their people free. They are the most innovative and productive. To the same extent that technology and wealth make us comfortable and safe, they make war more terrible. In the midst of modern total war, every aspect of life is conscripted, regulated, brought under central control. Churchill feared that this condition would become perpetual. These developments in war were matched by others stemming from the same cause and unfolding in regular domestic politics. War was becoming bigger, but also government was becoming bigger, and for the same reason, technology. The idea was born of scientifically managing society from a central source. Such management could cure the ills of society, including war. To achieve this, government should have access to all or most of the major resources of the society. But this was the very effect that Churchill feared modern war would have. Churchill was a lifelong opponent of socialism and bureaucracy. He saw in them a conscription of private resources that would undermine the ability of people to live freely and under their own command, just as modern war threatened to do. If the government deploys, directly or indirectly, more than half the resources in the economy, what place is there for ordinary people to control the government and to control their own lives? In recent days, there has been a struggle between President Trump and a retiring civil service appointee over who gets to appoint the latter's successor to lead the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. This agency is exempted from the control of its budget by Congress. In other words, it operates outside the control of anyone properly elected. If the key to the preservation of liberal government is a proper arrangement between public and private, one can see that the basis of liberal government may be eroding. Churchill warned of this all his life. Churchill's was a kind of statesmanship focused on a certain kind of strategy. This statesmanship would be deeply aware of the purposes of free government, and most importantly, freedom, but also justice or equality. The strategy in war was to fight only when necessary, and then to fight shrewdly, which means rapidly and ruthlessly to get the war over with and spare as much life as possible. Churchill was deadly in war. He thought that was more merciful. One wonders what he would think about our generation-long battles in the Middle East. Churchill's strategy in peace can be summarized with the word economy. There's much for the government to do. There can be a social safety net, but it should resemble private savings as much as possible and be run efficiently. There can be regulation of many kinds to protect people from infringement of private rights, but all this must be done cheaply, because money held in private hands is a public as well as a private good. If that principle is abandoned, the government grows unaccountable, and majorities will say, as they say in America today, that they are afraid of their government. In War and Peace, Churchill had a strategy for freedom. They were related. They both required an utter commitment to freedom. They both required recognition of the limits of politics and the limits of war. They both required the protection of the right of the people to control their government. We could use a strategy like that today. It is not hard to find. Go to the movies to see one part. Read the Churchill biography to see the rest. And that is the concluding part of the 3 Lessons of Statesmanship by Larry P. Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. And it is adapted from a speech delivered on December 1st, 2017 at Hillsdale College's Alan P. Kirby Jr. Center for Constitutional Studies and Citizenship in Washington, D.C. And this comes from a publication of Hillsdale College called Imprimis, and it is the December 2017 issue, Volume 46, Number 12. Larry P. Arnn is the 12th president of Hillsdale College. He received his BA from Arkansas State University and his MA and PhD in government from the Claremont Graduate School. From 77 to 80, he also studied at the London School of Economics and at the Worcester College, Oxford University, where he served as a director of research for Martin Gilbert, the official biographer of Winston Churchill. From 1985 until his appointment as president of Hillsdale College in 2000, he was president of the Claremont Institute for the Study of Statesmanship and Political Philosophy. He is the author of Liberty and Learning the Evolution of American Education, The Founder's Key, The Divine and Natural Connection Between the Declaration and the Constitution, and Churchill's Trial, Winston Churchill and the Salvation of Free Government. And I did want to say that I think that the key part of this whole 3 Lessons of Statesmanship, let me see if I can find, let's see if I can find it here. British, taking strong hand. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. How about that? And, well, I'm trying to find, there's a little section in here about, no, it wasn't in that one section. It must be in number 2 somewhere. About, maybe it's in section 1. Let's see. There we go. No one else on that day was either inclined to make or capable of making that speech, and Churchill had only become prime minister by a series of narrow chances. No story better illustrates one of Churchill's favorite lessons, a lesson valuable for us to keep in mind. Both chance and choice play a large part in human affairs. If everything were fate, Hitler would have won the war, for he was the one who believed that everything was fated in the historical process. And that is a belief that comes from a German philosopher named Hegel, who declared that he came up with the idea of clashing ideas, that history was a moving, living force, and that ideas clashed with each other. You had a synthesis, an antithesis, and they clashed together to provide a synthesis or a new idea. And then out of that would come another clash, and that's the way history evolved. And that people were just swept along by this, that it was a very deterministic viewpoint of life, denying the free will of the average individual. And so World War II, in its broadest sense, was a fight between those who knew and understood the power of and the existence of free will versus those who believed that history was the determinant in the affairs of everyday people. And the winner was the free will. Free will prevailed. So I think that was the key part of this entire 3 episodes of Statesmanship, is knowing and understanding the essence of it. because in a lot of ways today in our society in the United States, we still have those battles between those people that chiefly on the left that are suggesting that people's lives are determined, and those folks, some folks, not very many, on the right that say we have free will. And it makes a difference, for instance, in terms of homelessness, for instance. The homeless are held up today by the left as being worthy of a certain amount of sympathy and empathy, and that we should feel sorry for them because they are in a position that they're in due to no fault of their own. In other words, a determinism, that they've been forced to be homeless by circumstances and powers beyond their control. And it's just simply untrue that they are, at least that they remain that way. It is possible that certain forces can, on the margins, help to create a situation where an individual becomes homeless. But by and large, it is the individual's own choices, own decisions that put the individual where he or she is, not the forces on the outside. We have free will. We know this by the evidence of our senses. We change our minds on things every day. And the difference that it makes is in terms of how people that are making mistakes, that are living the way, for instance, the homeless are, should be treated and should be regarded. Should they be held up as martyrs, as the left says, or should they be looked at more with perhaps scorn and ridicule? Because after all, they exercise their free will, they put themselves in the position that they're in by and large, and they can by and large exercise their free will to get themselves out of the situation they're in. And in many, many, many cases, they simply refuse to do that, whether it is refusing to get help for mental illness, refusing to get help for drug addiction. They simply refuse to do it. So that means that why should I feel sorry for the individual that chooses, in essence, to stay on the street, to be on the street, and to stay on the street? I shouldn't. He should be subjected to the same rules that I'm subjected to. I'm not allowed to sleep in public places, in parks, on sidewalks, etc. He or she should not be allowed to do it either. I'm not allowed to poop wherever I want to. He or she should not be allowed to do it either. And if they can do these things, they should be confronted and forced to comply one way or another, either through citations or perhaps even being incarcerated. Anyways, that was the 3 lessons of statesmanship from Imprimis, and the next episode of Storytime will be on Thursday, and I think it will be either another issue of Imprimis or very possibly an article from Christianity Today. We will see. But until then, thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.